Developing overnight, State Department officials tell CNN that the Trump administration is preventing President-elect Joe Biden from accessing messages from foreign leaders. They're calling the State Department. They're not giving the president-elect the messages. In addition, they're blocking the president-elect from receiving these critically important daily intelligence briefings, all while the president, the outgoing president, Donald Trump, has engaged in what is described as a mass beheading at the Pentagon, firing the top-level brass and installing largely political loyalists. Joining me now is Independent Senator Angus King. He serves on the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. Senator King, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Let's start with what's going on with the daily intelligence briefings. You are on the Intelligence Committee. President-elect is not being given access to them. What's at stake here?
Well, what's at stake is the security of the United States. If you look back through history, for example, Bay of Pigs, Black Hawk Down, September 11th, what do those have in common? They all occurred in the first year of a new administration. In fact, the September 11th Commission expressly found that the slow transition between Clinton and Bush contributed to the problems that led up to September 11th. So this is really trifling with national security for no real reason. There's no, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. If the president wants to contest these ballots in various states, he can do so. But at the same time, you can do the transition. You can allow the daily briefs so that the president-elect will have the information necessary. This is a moment of vulnerability. The transition, any transition, is a moment of vulnerability when our adversaries look to take advantage. And this is being done for, as I say, no reason except apparently sort of the peak of the president. And it's dangerous. It's just downright dangerous for national security.
Republican Senator James Lankford now says that if it's still happening tomorrow, he's going to say something. Is that enough?
Well, listen, it's a start. James Lankford is one of the most thoughtful people in the Senate, and for him to speak out like that, he's from Oklahoma, a very red state, I think is significant. But he ought to be joined by all of his colleagues, by people that are involved in national security. But you got to remember, John, this is a president who has expressed very little interest in the president's daily brief in terms of intelligence throughout his term. So maybe he just doesn't think it's a big deal because he hasn't paid much attention to it himself. But again, if there were some policy reason, if there were some basis for this other than just, we're just going to stiff arm this guy who apparently beat us, you could understand it. But there's no argument. John, all of this week, all of the discussion, all the tweets and everything else, nothing has ever mentioned the national interest. There's been no discussion from this president about what's in the country's interest. And that's what's so disappointing about this, as well as being dangerous.
Look, Senator, you are an independent from Maine. Everyone likes you, which is frankly a little bit annoying. But given that, what's your message to the Republicans in the Senate right now who have been incredibly silent as this has taken place? What would you like to tell your colleagues?
Well, I'd like to tell them what I have been telling them privately, which is this is a moment of danger for the country. And do they really want at this dangerous time for their legacy to be silence? Everybody knows that this election is over. This discussion of the various ballots and fraud, there's been no allegation where it's risen to the level of even coming close to overturning one of the elections. If Pennsylvania stays, and Biden's lead is now over 50,000 votes, the election is over. It doesn't matter what happens in Georgia or Arkansas or Arizona or Nevada. So it's not going to change. So my colleagues, by being silent, are just, they're not serving the country. And I hate to say that because I'm very close to a lot of these folks. And I understand the politics. I understand they're worried about the Senate seats in Georgia, and they're worried about President Trump coming after them in a primary or something. But at some point, it seems to me, the country has to come first. And right now, it's clear that every day that this goes on is putting the country in more danger. And to stand back and allow the decapitation of the Defense Department in the middle of the transition, it's just, it's pretty shocking, as you can tell. I'm not usually speechless, but but this is putting the country at risk.
You called it a decapitation, which is very similar to what Barbara Starr was reporting is being said in the Pentagon. They're calling it a mass beheading in the Pentagon. Why do you think the president has done this?
Well, there are a couple of possible explanations. One is just personal pique. He didn't like it that Mark Esper stood up to him last year when he was making noises about sending troops into American cities. And, the issue is disloyalty. That's what I heard. I talked to some people and said, what's going on here? Disloyalty. Well, the problem is when Mark Esper took his oath of office, it wasn't to Donald Trump. It was to the United States Constitution. And the president, you remember he said, my generals, they aren't his generals. They're the United States of America's generals. And he mistakes personal loyalty to, doing your job. But this is the first administration in history where the most likely way to get fired is to do your job. So one is personal pique at Mark Esper. The other is, and this is more worrisome, is a desire to sort of clear the way for making major decisions in national security matters without any pushback, without any backtalk from those pesky people at the Pentagon who take their job seriously. What I'm hearing is the possibility of a unilateral 100% pullout from Afghanistan, which, by the way, John, would be very dangerous. We have an important counterterrorism mission there. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are still active. And if we pull out our troops unilaterally, but between now and Christmas or whatever the date is, that mission is essentially compromised, and we're right back where we were in 2001, subject to a terrorist attack being hatched in the wilds of Afghanistan. That's the dangerous thing that I think a lot of people are worried about. If I had to put money on it, I predict that's what's going to happen.
All right, well, we're watching 70 days, Senator Angus King of Maine. A pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining us this morning.